Yeah.
Great.
Low talker.
Right. Well, I think we're all excited about the opportunity, and we all see what could be, but we also know that, that's kind of wasted energy at this point. We got to maximize, the preseason. But at the same time, you do. I mean, you get excited about this team. What's possible, and then there's a reason why these guys decided to come back and forego their opportunity in the NFL, and that's to go do exactly that. And that's okay. I mean, these guys are proud, they're competitive, and they want it, and they think big, and that's the way it should be. But at some point, we got to get back to work and focus on what matters.
Nobody asked me that question today, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I would say they've done that and some. Yeah, they've there's a great energy around this team. They know what they want. There's an urgency, there's a purpose, and they've come together. You can just see it. We don't want to create distraction for this team. We want them to continue to focus on what matters. But you can just feel it when you're around the guys. And you guys who have spent some time with our players, you guys can feel it. It's real. So what does all that mean? I mean, we got to earn everything we get next year. Nothing's going to be given to us. And so, that's going to start August 1st from transition from the summer to the preseason, and here we go.
Ryan, I might have missed it. Did you name your starting quarterback today yet?
I did not, Tim.
How close is that competition? Can you, just going into camp in your brain?
Well, I think going into the spring you had Lincoln and you had Devin, who really only ones that really knew the offense.
Yeah.
So we wanted to kind of get through the spring, see what that looked like, go through the summer, and now, the first 2 weeks of preseason, I think we'll have a better idea of kind of where everybody is based on their knowledge of the offense. But some guys have really stepped up in the summer, and whether it's leadership, it's there's a lot of different things you can evaluate in the summer, but it's going to come down to what happens on the field.
In Will's experience as a starter, that weighs heavily too, doesn't it? The fact he's been a starter for a couple of seasons before.
It's there for sure. Yeah, he's an older guy and he's played a lot of football, so that's something that we watched and we evaluated. We brought him in, so experience does matter.
Sometimes those freshmen start to temper expectations around this.
Right.
But with Jeremiah, how do you balance that between understanding he's a freshman, but also understanding he's not really a typical freshman?
Yeah. Again, I'm trying not to go down the road too long with him. It's easy to see how talented he is. I think the thing you already recognize, though, is that he's really good at the no-talent things as well. But I'm going to hold off comments until he plays his first snap at Ohio State, and we'll go from there.
Denzel mentioned that he said he probably doesn't even pay attention to social media stuff because he's working all the time. I guess when you hear about the stories in the offseason with them, is that unlike any other freshman you've coached before?
We've had some talented guys before, but he's right up there. Yeah, he is. And again, I like you said, I don't think our guys are too tied into some of that stuff. They're kind of focused on what they're focused on, and but it's going to be exciting to see him play.
Yep.
I think when you look at year in and year out, the expectations are what they are, and every year you have an opportunity at Ohio State. You have an opportunity to win every game, and that's what the expectations are, and that's because of the great players and coaches that have come before, and we certainly understand that. And after every year, you got to identify what are the things that have held you back from reaching your goals, knowing that we want perfection and we want to win the game at the end of the season, and in particular, like last year, what was it that prevented us from finishing off that last drive or getting off the field on defense, and why didn't we do that? And it's easy to say, well, it comes down to a play or two, but that's not really the case. We need to do is we need to leave no doubt. No doubt. Don't leave it to one play. Don't leave it to one call. Don't leave it to one stop. Leave no doubt when you're on the field, and we're not going to get into all the reasons or all the things that we've done to try to address that, to get that fixed. But we worked hard on that, and we feel good about where we're at going into the season.
Ryan, what the quarterback loss do for the team, the offense in particular?
Some money calls there.
Yeah, I don't think that really had much of an effect, quite honestly. I think it had more to do with, our guys who just love Ohio State. They love their brothers. They want to come back, and they want to have some hardware when they leave.
Quarterbacks in the spring, you rotated when they kept that position. Start next week, you have to pare that down.
Yeah, so I think what we're going to do, those first 4 practices that are open, is have the 2 fields to try to get as many reps as possible. I think once we get done with that 4th practice, then we'll kind of stop with that. But it allows us to get almost double the amount of reps in a less amount of time. So, the more reps we can get for all 5 of those quarterbacks we're going to do. Teamwork will probably be in a 2-spot mentality. And then after those first 4 days, we'll take that Monday off, and then we'll get back on one field and kind of go from there. At that point, we'll probably be a little bit more deliberate about how we parse out the reps.
Right, you said Chip's off quite a bit when he was in Oregon. I'm wondering how much is even different from the last time you guys were things like that.
Yeah, because it's been, I guess, 7 years, and when you look at that offense, there was 2, 3, sometimes I think maybe 4 tight ends in the game at once. So that was very different than what he was in the NFL and then at Oregon. But even before Oregon, he had history of some 2-backs and different things. So some of the ideas that he's bringing to the table are things that we hadn't really considered here. So that's been exciting. But ultimately, it's going to come down to what are the right plays that fit our guys. There's a million plays, and we got playbooks up to here, and we got film going back a long way. We've done a lot of things on offense. He's done a lot of things on offense. People bring in different things, but what are the right things for the guys that we have? And that's going to be the key. And then what is our fastball? Like the best teams and the best offenses, like this is what we're running, and you got to stop us. And that's, to me, what we got to really identify in this preseason and just hammer it home.
I sense a lot of excitement about this sport, the merit of what you guys have done passing since you've been here, obviously Chip doesn't have the ball. As you contemplated changing or making the change to OC, did you think we have to change a little bit how we run the ball, or did it just work out that you're bringing in a guy, Chip, who has a strong background in the
Yeah, 2 things. I think the first thing is we knew we needed a quarterback who could run. At least have the ability to run and pull the ball. That was something that we felt like we needed to do. When you combine that with Chip's history of always having a quarterback that can do that, that was the right fit and for where we're at. Now he also, has not always just run the quarterback into the ground. Like that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like quarterback power every other play, but having the threat of that. When you think about what Justin did, those type of things here. So we have a background in that as well. But I feel like Chip can bring us to the next level in terms of that, and it's exciting. I think the running backs are excited about it. The offensive line's excited about it. Justin and he have a good relationship that way. So, we're going to need to do that. We know if we're going to win the games we need to win, we have to get that done.
You mentioned running hardware. You said you're not going to run the power, obviously. We're talking about, just for an example, what CJ was in Georgia.
That's right.
To the extent
That's right.
You're not necessarily going to run a bunch of design runs for him, but he has to be able to do that if there's pass rushes in space. Is that what you're talking
Yeah, that's right. And when you have a room of 5 quarterbacks, you can be a little bit more aggressive with that than maybe with CJ when we were a lot lighter in that room. So I think all that comes into play.
Coach, you mentioned that earlier that you have a tremendous amount of trust with Chip Kelly. I just would love to know how that relationship has evolved.
Yeah, it goes back to growing up in our hometown and playing for him, and then also coaching for him when he was in the NFL. And then, our relationship has always been strong. We lived right near each other for a few years, right after COVID, and his wife and my wife are very close. My kids know him, I almost treat him like an uncle. So, that matters when you're talking about trust.
You mentioned the hardware in the spring. What are your thoughts on the new expanded playoff?
I think it's exciting for college football. I think when you get into December, it's going to be great to see, more teams alive. I think November is going to be exciting because more teams will have the opportunity to be alive. So it's going to bring a whole different element to college football. I think it's really, really exciting. I'm fired up about it. I think that it's going to be very different. You're not going to have a whole month to prepare for games. The games are going to come faster. They're going to hit faster. Your depth is going to be important. Your fundamentals are going to be important. So it's going to be exciting to watch. It's going to be exciting to watch, some teams, host home games, in their home spots in December. So there's a lot about it that's exciting. But although we're going to talk a lot about the different changes that are going on in college football, I think ultimately it's still going to be football. I mean, it's still going to come down to stopping and running the football, taking care of the football, and playing really smart. So, ultimately, I know there's going to be tables on the sideline, and there's coach-to-player communication and all those things, but the game of football hasn't changed.
Brian, how much of the offense
It'll be interesting. He's got files that go back a long way, yeah, I mean, maybe there'll be some things that get popped out, and if it is, we'll have to figure out how we can match it up to what it looked like. It'll look a lot different when it's our quarterbacks running it. Certainly when I ran it, but rarely are there new ideas. They're just ideas that are recycled, and then finding the right ones for our guys. But Chip's got a long library of plays in his background.
Brian, how much do you trust Chip? Just from a standpoint of a guy who's called plays for so long, what do you think you'll miss about it?
I do like it. Just the competitiveness of it and game planning, and, the thrill of scoring a touchdown after putting all the work in and all the, when you come up with a play, then you have to install it, then you have to practice it, then you have to go through all the contingency plans, then you have to call in the right moment. I mean, there's a lot that leads up to it, all the preparation, and it's exhilarating when it gets done. There's that feel.
Generally speaking, I've been asking a bunch of coaches this today. It seems like coaches with play calling experience are a little bit reluctant to delegate that sometimes. Why do you think that's such a precious thing to see?
I think every coach has something that they do. When I was with Coach Meyer, he was an offensive guy, but he was also a wide receiver and special teams guy, and so that was kind of his baby. And I've been around defensive coaches where that's their thing, and secondary coaches, and that it's kind of what your background is, and you take a lot of pride in it. So you want to make sure that it's done at a high level. And so I think that's probably like that with any coach based on their background.
Ryan, you mentioned Caleb Downs, possibility of running back last month. Is that more about Caleb, or how much of it is actual concern or worry about the number of running backs?
That was, at the time, that was more about Caleb. We felt like in recruiting that I watched him play against Buford in a high school game, one of the best games I've ever seen. He was on both sides of the ball. He was returning kicks. He was running the ball, and I was like, this guy can play running back at Ohio State now. So he has the ability. Now, do we want to put that on his plate right away? I think he has interest in doing it. I think he'd like to do some returning. I think we want to get him started with safety and go from there. Since TC did, we lost TC for the year, it's something that we have to make sure that we're on top of and building contingency plans. I don't think we have to sound the alarm just yet, but it's good to have things down the road that we can go to if we need to.
Is there anything other Caleb would be breaking glass in case of emergency? You could use some wide receivers in here. Are those the things that you're talking about with the 4? That's probably not the amount we want. We're talking 60 or 80.
Sure. And we do have, a couple other guys in that room that we'll kind of see what we have as we get into, and Mick's had some good feedback on those guys. So, we didn't really know who TC was, going into that year a couple years ago, but he actually, filled the need for us and hit a touchdown in that game. So hopefully we can get a little bit of that there and get some carries out of that. If not, then, we'll have to figure out what a contingency plan might be.
Right. You have the freshman quarterback and Julian saying the pass process. How much can that accelerate the development?
Well, he is a fast processor. He's very, very twitchy. People talk a lot about the twitch of the lower half, how quick they move, but he's twitchy from the waist up, how fast the ball comes out of his hand. Dwayne Haskins was that way. The ball just came out fast, and his mind works that way as well. And that's a good trait to have as a quarterback.
Right. Good thoughts on playing
I think I mentioned this before, that maybe the guys who played baseball or the guys who are from Chicago, so Lincoln Kindholtz is a tremendous baseball player. Emeka Buka played baseball. Taiwan Malone played a little bit at Ole Miss. great baseball backgrounds, or then the guys who are from the Chicago area, like Carnell Tate. They may understand the history and tradition of Wrigley Field, maybe more than some other folks, on the team. And I think for the coaches who know, and me growing up in Boston and Fenway and understanding what Wrigley is, I've been to Wrigley before. It's a great place. I think we'll explain that to them. We're not going to make it bigger than it is. I think it'll probably be more significant for those who have had exposure to it.
When an athletic director mentions your NIL budget, it wasn't that long ago that Saban and Jimbo were ready to kill each other. NIL. Is this normal behavior now across the league? Is it acceptable for other coaches, other ADs to be referencing, good, bad, or otherwise?
Right.
But that's a thing, and how true or not is the big thing.
Right. I think it's a little tricky for people to make comments when they don't really know what's out there. I mean, these aren't numbers that are easily accessible. So, I think that's something like I wouldn't do. But to each their own. I think that there's a lot of speculation out there, and I think that sometimes that is tricky for all of us as we're trying to figure out what benchmarks are, values, things like that. What are certain salary caps for different programs? The other part that is interesting at Ohio State that I've recognized is that there are the collectives, there are those type of things, and they support our program very, very strongly. But there's also the other part of the endorsements that happen at Ohio State. When you have a 12 million person fan base and you have 2 million people in the city of Columbus and the passion of Ohio State in the state of Ohio, there's a lot of opportunity outside of the collectives. And the value of being an Ohio State football player in Columbus is tremendously high, and that is another part of it. And I don't know how you figure that in, but or how you put a number on something like that. Because I certainly don't have that right now, so I don't know how somebody else would.
Historically speaking, you guys had a ton of recruiting battles way back in history, and certainly picked up the last 4 or 5 years. What has it been like recruiting against them this last year since the news of them joining the league? Is ongoing, going at each other's throats as we speak? Yeah, absolutely. No, they're doing a good job, and they're certainly well positioned. Everybody has a different, setup where they are, and their setup is very, very different than ours. Ours is based on the city of Columbus and our fan base, and it comes from a lot of different ways. Theirs is set up a little bit different, but they've done a good job recruiting, and Dan is very, very aggressive in recruiting, and has recruited some good players and good talent.
How well do you negotiate or what do you expect for in terms of the D-Day addition?
I assume that it's going to be similar to the way it's been in the past, but we'll see once we get into the season.
When Emeka, he was talking about how each of the guys that came back arrived at that decision on their own. Yeah. One, does that surprise you? And what were those conversations when they were talking to you about the reason they wanted to stay?
The term that a lot of them gave me was unfinished business. They felt like they wanted to have something to show for all the work they put into the program. That was what a lot of them said to me. But like you said, each of them kind of did it on their own. That being said, I think they were in communication a lot. I think it started, Jack was a big part of it. Cody Simon was early on decided that they wanted Lathan Ransom, jumped in, and then slowly guys start jumping in, and it was a big deal. It really was, because we haven't had that since I've been at Ohio State, and they led the way on it. We infused a few guys in the portal and a few guys in recruiting and the freshman class, and then really went to work on getting the coaching staff the right way. And so there's a lot of excitement around the program right now. We've worked really hard to get this team to where it is right now, and so and I think when you get around our guys, you'll see that they're focused right now. They're not caught up in the emotion of the expectations of what this is or isn't. We know we got a long road ahead of us.
What has it been for you guys so far? Have you seen him kind of take on that leadership role that you're going to be in the center?
He gives a veteran experience that is I think calming to the guys up front. I think he's gaining his voice more and more every day. We said this before. You don't just jump in at Ohio State and start barking at people. But he is, and we're going to need him to. He's the center. So Carson's going to play some center as well. We're still going to see how that all shakes out coming out of the preseason. But when Seth's in there, he's got to have a voice in there, and so does Carson. But Carson's going to play some guard as well, and that's exciting to see. I think they both had really good off seasons. It's been fun to see and get some feedback from Seth on just how the off season's been different here than when he was at Alabama. But no, having somebody his not only his experience but his maturity and the amount of games he's played, is great. I think it's calming for everybody on offense.
What did he say was the difference?
Very veteran center group last year, not some Carson was informed. Do you think that you guys miss having like a veteran center in the middle there to be able to mark out those orders and feel like one of the really gained something in that center?
I think it was a tough ask at times for Carson. I thought he did a great job of going in there and battling his tail off. Probably was in there a half a season too early. Like you said, if Luke was there, then he wouldn't have been in that situation unless maybe Luke comes in and gets hurt. But I thought Carson, for where he was at in his career, to go in there and battle the way he did, he's going to have a great career at Ohio State. And but that doesn't mean that it was easy for him. And when you lose a veteran guy like that, it isn't easy to replace. But having that year under his belt is going to really pay off for Carson. And he fought every day. Every day, I give him credit. He kept going back, and was it always perfect? No, but now he's changed his body. He's a whole nother year under his belt. I'm fired up to see what he looks like here.
Ryan Beck has always been guys. Now it's
Yeah.
Have you seen anything different in this offseason defensively those guys? And if so,
yeah, I think he has always been a leader. He's always had an approach where he walks in a room and he demands respect. He's got an old soul. But you also have to have a voice, and he's finding that voice. He's had some opportunities this summer to speak up and call guys out. He's done that. He's going to have to do that more.
Ryan, when you have a backfield as talented as yours with two guys who have both been number one running backs in the past, how are you and Chip going to decide which guy you want on the field as a game progresses?
Yeah, Coach Locke is going to be ultimately responsible for how that rotation goes. But both guys are going to play. Both guys are going to play a lot. They're going to have a lot of carries.
Has Coach Locke brought what obviously y'all you've practiced on the field a little bit, but has he brought what you wanted him to bring to that running back coach position?
Coach Locke?
Yeah.
It's been great in a short period of time to watch his passion for the game. He's a tough guy. He demands respect when he walks in a room, but he demands his players to play hard. You can see that right out of the gate. And the guys like him. He pours into his players, and I'm excited to see these guys run under him this year.
Going back to what you said about Seth, what has he told you is a little bit different from Alabama? I would think you're always looking for comparisons. What do they do?
There was nothing.
What I mean?
There wasn't anything that jumped out, but just interesting to hear, just compare and contrast different approaches, and like you said, always trying to figure out how you can do things better.
Yeah, and offensive meetings I would think you still sit in on things. Brainstorming. Do you like what you're hearing about which way, kind of the direction y'all might be going offensively? Do you try to keep your mouth shut and just listen to what those guys are saying, or are you dictating a kind of a direction all along?
It's a little bit of both. I think there's a lot of collaboration in that room. And again, I think it's my job to try to identify where we need to be and where we're going, and try to find that balance along the way. Because again, just being here now for my 8th year, I got an idea what's coming on the horizon here in this conference. But at the same time, Chip has unbelievable experience of putting an offense together and identifying talent and what guys do well. So it's a collaboration, and I got all the trust in the world that he's going to do a great job.
Chip runs about 80%, 90% gun and pistol. Is that an area of focus with Seth after last year? Or do we just count that up to the yips? What happened in some of the games?
We'll have to see how the season goes. We have not seen anything like that in practice, and so we'll kind of go from there. We will be under center some this year, but I don't know what the percentage will be, but we'll mix it up.
Ryan, when you have a backfield as focused with Seth after last year, do we see him kind of
Ryan, I'm curious, with the playoff expanding, you're looking at a potential for a 17-game season. Do you have to make any adjustments like later in the year, keeping guys fresh, or how are you kind of approaching that?
I think we're all trying to figure that out, what that looks like. But certainly depth is going to be critical. But it's not going to change how we work every day. We know we need to get done. I do think with the player to coach communication, you're going to see probably more huddling. You may see less plays possibly. Just kind of, I don't have any scientific numbers to back that up. I just see that happening more and more this season because I feel like, huddling, is kind of a lost art. I think people are going to just find themselves getting back to that and not showing their formation, but we'll see. So that'll be part of it. But I also just, playing depth is going to be important, keeping guys fresh. We're going to have to figure out how that all looks. But we know we need to be playing our best football at the end of the season, and we have to finish strong.
The players talk a lot about
Well, when you have, the earpiece in your helmet, you can get the call over from the sideline, and typically when that happens, you're either kind of in a muddle huddle or you're in a huddle as the quarterback, can bark out the play, and now you don't have to find yourself signaling plays from the sideline.
Brian, you play Iowa and Oregon back-to-back. Does the speed of Iowa's offense, does that affect how you prepare for Oregon trying to replicate game speed like 7 days later?
I mean, I got all the respect in the world for Iowa. I think they do a great job, and I think Kirk is one of the best coaches in college football, and that's going to be all we can do to win that game. Well, I think if we're looking at statistics, we're looking at the wrong thing. I think those guys on defense want to come back, be the best defense in the country, but want to win. It's one thing to say, well, we have this number of defense or this number of offense. Like that's great. We've had a top 3 defense now. We've had a top 3 offense. Like these guys want to win, and so whatever it takes to win, and it's going to start stopping the run. Yeah, and I think, I would say, from afar, hey, we played well enough on defense to win. We should have scored more on offense. But the truth is, we got to win the games. And like you said, when the game's in a balance, we got to make those plays. Yeah, I mean, they open that up now, so a lot of those guys are going to be able to get on the field and actually, coach on the field and make tactical decisions in game. So that's a change.
Is there a percentage of those assistants that will work on the tablets, just getting them ready, getting the technology ready in between series?
Yep. All that's in play, and we've talked about how we're going to do that. And actually try to simulate that in practice during the summer.
Hey Ryan, a lot of your players are talking about how much they're playing golf or really competitive and stuff. Do you get a chance to go and play with them?
Golf, I've not played with those guys other than at the simulator every now and again. But we have for our players in the city of Columbus, like they don't, they get out a little bit, but they're at their place, they're at the facility, and they need some things to do. And golf has really been great for them. And we have some great golf courses in Columbus. And me, I'm a 12, but I've only played once all summer. So
you mentioned a Mecca as an old soul. He told us he's a 6 handicap. Can you verify?
Yes, he is. And he's probably sandbagging at a 6. So I'd be careful with him at a 6.
I think he said 6.6.
Yeah, I was going to say, make sure you figure out what kind of 6 that is. Is that his index or what is that?
How big is it for this team that they have had those experiences on the field? Do you feel like that's kind of an initiative some of the older players are taking this year?
Yeah, I do. I think it all comes into play on this thing, and that's what just makes this team so exciting, and getting all these guys together with their experiences and their mindsets and their competitiveness. It's a great group to be around.
This offseason from a personnel standpoint, it's keeping guys adding information. Do you think Ohio State will understand this?
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. I mean, it's our job is talent acquisition and try to get the best players we possibly can and be aggressive and field the best team. And if that means high expectations, great. That means we have a great team, and so we're going to be super aggressive. I think we're doing that in the recruiting class, this incoming class. So we're going to keep doing it. The transfer portal, it's a great time to be at Ohio State. We have a lot to sell. The city of Columbus, the school itself, our program, our culture, the type of people that we have. So we're just going to keep putting the pedal to the metal and keep rolling.
That aggressiveness, Did something have to trigger that? Or that's now in place now? No matter how the season goes or next season goes, that's how you're going to play.
I mean, we've always been aggressive, always recruited well. I just think that now, the landscape's changed a little bit and has opened some doors, and we're trying to make sure that we're a leader.
Ryan, do you think that part of that? I mean, you guys are very highly talked about in the NIL space, but I know you don't lead with that ever.
Right.
You guys don't lead with that, but it has seemed like this cycle specifically, been able to go with Alabama, haven't happened in 40 years. Is NIL, not just for you guys, but everyone, change the way that you let recruit nationally? Does it level off conversation?
I think, like you said, that the number one thing is, wanting to be a Buckeye, understanding the tradition, what the city can do, what our program can do, how we can develop you, playing for championships, all those things. And if the number one thing is NIL, it probably isn't the right place for you, just like you said. That being said, it's providing some of the recruits more opportunities than were in the past, and we are seeing some different trends. And I don't know if that has to do with the NIL or just the world getting smaller or whatever it might be, or the expansion of these conferences. It'd be an interesting study to do, but I know that it allows us an opportunity to maybe provide resources for some of these guys on our team that we weren't able to in the past.
On the flip side, artists who are around the country are getting a little more active in Ohio, right?
Sure.
How do you find the balance?
Yeah, you gotta. I think the thing that's tricky is, a place like Ohio State. Let's just say you're recruiting wide receivers, for example. Brian's done a great job. You sign 3 guys. Well, you'd like 3 5-star recruits. Well, that's not always going to be the case anymore, because of the way things are. And so you have to find the right value and the right, slots for each guy. And ultimately, you have to have a roster of 85 guys, and who knows, what this is going to look like in the next couple of years with the scholarship numbers. But you have to make sure that you're identifying the right people, and it's not just unlimited. So you have to find value at certain positions, and sometimes there may be some guys that we're going to bring in that maybe we wouldn't have brought in certain years from different parts of the country. But there's also maybe some guys that we may not have recruited who fit a role of a developmental guy that may not see the field for 2 to 3 years because maybe his NIL value was lower than somebody else, if that makes sense. Yeah.
You guys seem to be embracing everything a little bit more. Do you feel that, or do you feel like you guys are embracing that? Not Maddie or Bus, but just like the whole
I think when you owe it to the guys that came back, that these guys didn't come back for no reason. They came back for a reason, and we owe that to them. As coaches, we owe that to them. As everybody else who is part of the program that are there to support them. We're thinking big, and these guys are thinking big, and we know what's at stake, and we want to do everything we can to have them leave with a legacy behind and a bunch of hardware. So. We're not going to shy away from that, but that's not also the focus. The focus is, getting to work here in the preseason and building this foundation. And our guys know how to work. They've had a great summer.
What are your thoughts on possibly having 105 scholarship? That's the number being talked about.
Yeah.
How do you view that? Obviously, you'd be in favor of it.
Yeah.
Would you use that for a lot of it?
I would have to discuss it a little bit more with Ross. Ross and I have had that conversation before. I think that, there has to be a discussion about, right now 120 has been the number that we all feel comfortable with going into a season. And so, if you have attrition, if you have injuries at 105, there's got to be something in place to be able to replace, and does that mean, you bring in a certain amount of guys in preseason and then cut it back before the season starts? I think all those need to be determined. I don't think we're there now, but I do know that number 120 has always been a number that we've all used for years because, it works. Guys have been higher, some guys have been lower, but ultimately that's kind of been the number we've circled around. So to go to 105, we'd have to make some adjustments.
You mentioned Mecca not seeing the best of him last year. What is the best of the Mecca?
A healthy is really what I meant.
Yeah. On the field, what would that be?
well, Mecca can do so many things. I always said, what's the, I don't know what the question is, but the answer was a Mecca. Whether it was punt return, he could catch a handoff, he could throw a bubble, he could block, he could run a deep route. I mean, there's not much a Mecca can't do. You think about him as an athlete too. I mean, he's a baseball player. He's a really good golfer. His dad was a tennis player. He played tennis. I mean, he can do a lot of things. He can do a lot of things as a player. And when I think about Emeka, I think about someone who's just strong. He's strong as a player. He's strong mentally. He's strong in his faith. And he's somebody that's a warrior and somebody that we're going to count on this year in big spots.
Curious how quickly after maybe get that text or the next paper retiring, you kind of start going into action mode that some of these guys go into the portal, we're going to go after them.
I don't remember the time frame on it all. When guys entered the portal and didn't enter the portal and all that stuff. But all three of those guys, I think the timing was different. Seth, I think, was a little bit earlier than all the other guys because we had a little bit of a hole there. The Julian thing was really kind of late in how that all played out. But very, very happy he's part of the program. He's got a bright future ahead of him. But very, very, unique situation. That was kind of one of those things that we didn't see coming at all. But certainly glad it worked out and didn't plan for. The Caleb one, once he entered the portal, we had a great relationship with he and his family, and felt like we'd be right there with a couple other schools. And, worked hard. We flew down there once he was in the portal and spent some time with his family. And when he decided to jump on board, that was a big deal for our program. And he's been great. The guys have embraced him, and we're excited to see him play this year.
Ryan, you're talking about those workouts. Did you do anything differently in the approach?
No, I mean, it's the same thing. Like, what are the things that have worked, and what are the things we got to tweak to get better? But there's a great ramp up going on right now on how we do this. It's very, very well thought out that Mick has about these workouts that are going on these last couple of weeks and leading into the preseason camp, on the amount of running that we're doing, that how much stress is actually being put on the lower half, a certain amount of weights to simulate what the first few days of practice are, because we know those first few days of practice can be touch and go. So I think we've done a really good job of preparing our guys to be healthy, to have a good week of practice, but it's been more about the team, the leadership. Every day there's an effort grade. Every day in the entire group there's an effort grade, and that gets sent out to the coaches. They get it. I see it. And the leaders, are a big part of that, and that's a big commitment by him and his staff to do that every single day, and to rate every single one of our guys and send it out, hold these guys accountable. So it's been a great summer, and Mick and his staff have been excellent. We do this, and then I forget people. Obviously the two running backs are going to have to play. They're going to have to play. They're going to get games and get carries. Milan and Demarion Witten just got there. So when you get there in the summer, you're a little bit behind. So they got some ground to cover. It's hard for offensive linemen to make a major impact early on defense. Edric Houston has probably flashed the most, but we're pretty deep at defensive end. Jalen McClain has done a nice job, and so he'll see some time this season for sure. Who am I forgetting? Aaron Scott. Yeah, Aaron Scott had, really as the spring went on, he flashed more and more. He's had a good summer. Bryce West was injured, so I haven't really seen him do a whole bunch, but we'll kind of see what we got there. Both the young linebackers, we'll see, huh? Yeah, so the punter, that's going to be a battle that goes into, probably the third week, to see, if Nick can win the job, and he's got we got 3 or 4 guys in there that are going to be in the mix. He's got a big leg. He's young, so we'll kind of see. We got another guy with some experience coming in. So, but those guys are important. So we'll kind of see what that looks like.
You always mention the punter battle.
Yeah.
Defense as it was last year. Do you need more
more aggressive? Is that all you got to do?
Maybe in certain spots. Yeah, maybe in certain spots, but ultimately, we got to just figure out a way to win the game, and if that means, mixing something up at certain points, we'll do that. But it's usually not just one thing.
You mentioned coming out of the spring, that right side of the offensive line, question mark still in summer months. For starters, is Josh Pryor still an option at the guard or tackle? What have you seen from the type of
Yeah, I would say he's an option, but right now he's our right tackle. Yeah, it looks like, based on the summer that he's had, that he'll be our right tackle going in. Yeah, good summers in Carson, all those guys. Austin Saravell's had a good summer, so got to get him out there and start hitting people. It's just hard to see with offensive linemen until you're actually moving stuff. And so, we'll get a better feel here after we get the pads on.
Ryan, since the decision making is going to primarily be up to individual schools, what is just your view on how revenue sharing might affect Ohio State, might enhance what you guys already were doing in terms of NIL, and have there been conversations about how football programs get a factor in a university-wide approach to revenue sharing? Yeah,
and how it's going to be a factor with Title IX and all that.
Yep.
Yeah, I've had great conversations with Ross about this. Spoke to the commissioner, here at the Big Ten, and also with some of the administrators about this very thing. And I think it's fair to, expect uniformity in Title IX when it comes to, the breakdown of revenue sharing. I think it's a great opportunity for our guys. But I think we all need to come together to have some sort of uniformity there as we move forward. But it certainly is exciting for our players.
About 4 minutes, folks. Ryan, you were asked about Caleb Downs before. Is there anyone else you could see moving into that backfield, getting some carries over the course of the season?
I would probably say, maybe, Brandon Ennis, I guess, would be one that, you look at there. Mecca's carried the ball. I mean, you have to be creative, I guess, if you got that far down the road.
Right. Obviously, know what you have at coach, but when it comes to St. Louis, it's the most like
Yeah, since I've been there, yes. Yeah.
It's a flash every spring. Get on the field. What have you seen from him?
Well, we're going to have to see consistency, but we saw more flashes of him showing up at the ball in the spring. But like you said, I mean, it's got to be consistent, because as a linebacker, you can have 2 or 3 bad plays and that can ruin your whole afternoon. So there's a level of discipline that has to be there. But every year you grow up more and more, you get more and more of those reps. You see things. It slows down for you. I think it's slowing down for CJ. Yeah. I mean, the only one right now would be TC would be the only one that won't be out there. Yes. Yes. We talked about it this week, and he's still going to think about it. We were told that the player-to-coach communication can't be used up in the box. Now that we have, more flexibility with our coaches being on the headset now with the new rule, that's going to maybe play into it. So, he has not decided yet. I'm comfortable with either way, whatever he thinks is best. I do think that maybe, having the tablet up in the box is going to be a little bit of a cleaner environment for him to be able to identify what happened in the last series. But we have some good coaches, so we'll allow him to kind of make that decision as we get closer.
2 more questions, folks. Ryan, do you still think
I told him once he first got here.
Yeah, I do. I still think they're going to be a part of this until there's just more overall structure in terms of a cap and all those things. And I just, until something happens that leads us to think that they aren't going to be a part of this, I see it continuing the way it is right now. Yeah, I mean, that I don't know. And I don't quite understand how they're going to keep an eye on that and really regulate that. I think this is kind of going off on a tangent, but I think the only way to do that is to, hire some sort of third party to enforce that, because, we have enough challenges and forcing certain things. And so the only way to do that would be to do it through a third party. And until that conversation comes up, I just don't see how it happens.
Remember we were talking a couple of years ago here about transfer portal and NIL coming together, perfect storm, et cetera. As you look back on it now, are you stunned by how quickly things have shifted? How would you describe it, Ryan?
I was actually thinking that, I think it was only a couple of years ago when I said, I think maybe in 2 years we'll wake up and not recognize college football.
Yeah.
I think I said that right here.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that earlier. So I don't think we're that far off. You think about where it was a couple of years ago and where it is right now. If someone were to say that, you'd be like, well, the playoffs, all the expansion, all those different things, and now what's going on, some of the caps that are going on and what some of these guys are making, it's just very different.
Is it for the better? What is your take on it?
So, I think I've shared this maybe with a couple of folks, but I did some research about Ohio Stadium 100 years ago, now 101 years ago.
Yeah.
And Chick Harley was, the hot, running back that everyone was coming to see. I think it was on Woodruff and Lane. It was
Ohio Field.
Yeah, wood bleachers.
Yeah.
And there was no room for everybody to sit. So the idea was that they're going to build Ohio Stadium and have over 60,000 seats in the stadium. And everybody thought the outrage of college football. Like, what does this become? It's out of control. And so this, they didn't raise money from the city. They didn't raise money from the state. They didn't raise money from the university. They raised it from the community. And the community raised the money to build Ohio Stadium. And it brought people together. I think some people believe that the Horseshoe was built like a magnet to draw people to the campus. And it did, and it does on Saturdays. And 100 years later, I feel like we're somewhat in the same situation. Different. People trying to figure out where college football is going, but the community surrounded the program to get it to where it needs to be. And, we'll be in there 8 weekends and Saturday coming together again to try to cheer on the Buckeyes. But, trying not to get too far out in front of it with the outrage and, what is it bad for football or not? I think that the opportunity these guys are getting and the marketability of our guys in Columbus, as you guys have seen, is tremendous, and it's real. So that's been exciting to see. Not having the structure that we'd all like to see is frustrating at times, but we'll just keep managing it, keep trying to be aggressive, keep putting our best team we can out there, and then go back to coaching football.
Last question, Heather Bennett.
I was wondering if your perception of conference championship games has changed in the 12-team playoff, because it's a gamble. If you lose the game, that's where you have to play 17 games to win the national title. Do you look at it any differently?
Talking to Tony, he's brought this up before and what that means, and should there be some conversation about what that means on that weekend, and I won't get into all the conversation that's been had, but I think it's a great question and a great point. I just think that we all know how important it is to win the conference, and I think what that's meant to college football, in the tradition of college football, and playing in this stadium and the electricity of that weekend, and what it means to win the conference, especially having 18 teams now. It just means so much, and to take that away would be a challenge. Now, when you look at it practically from a wider lens of the playoffs and everything, I can see the argument on both sides, but until then, I'd like to play for the Big Ten championship and win the Big Ten championship. There's just that experience you can't replicate, and it's one of those things that you don't forget, and it's an experience that I think our guys deserve to play. So I haven't played it, but I coach it. So RJ plays it, and I tell him what to run.
Imagine not in it.
What's that?
You want to be in it next year?
I'm a little disappointed I'm not in it. I'd like to be in it.
Coach, thank you very much.
All right, guys, thanks.